Hey, hi, hello everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Here is Litara White, and if you guys don't know me, I am a channeler, an energy activator, a speaker, and a singer. And the way I feel about myself is that I'm here on earth to bring vibrations of unconditional love and to share my gifts and share my story from the heart, from my authentic self to inspire others and empower other people to be authentic and have a life full of joy and love and experience the unconditional love for themselves and for others as well. And depends, I don't know, I'm not sure how many videos have you guys been following, but my last 2 or 3 videos I've realized um, when I was recording them, I saw that my higher self started really coming through with this very nurturing and healing energies directed to the divine masculine. Um, and generally for men, and I started getting comments and very positive feedback from males around me, and from some other viewers who, even though they were not male, they were not men, but also, all the videos, they go for both genders, because even me as a woman, right, and women in general, we also have our inner masculine and inner feminine energy, right? It's not always about the gender. So it kind of just happened, I started getting feedback, and then I believe that everything is coming in a divine time. Everything that happens in the flow is meant to be. So through a friend of mine, I met this powerful guest that I have for you guys today. His name is Dr. Will Harvey, and he is based on the East Coast. Dr.
Yep,
Will, you're in Maryland, right?
correct. Yeah, just outside of Baltimore.
Yes, Baltimore. Okay, good. I'm not. I've only been once.
That's our East Coast is fine. That's easy.
Yeah. So we're merging today. As you guys know, probably I'm based in San Francisco, like West Coast,
Hmm.
California. So, and then we have like the other side of the country, which I
There you
think is
go.
kind of symbolic, right? It's like the opposites, like the yin and the yang, the
That's
West.
pretty cool.
Yeah, like the feminine and the masculine. And actually, when I talked to Dr. Will before, it was kind of his idea, to maybe do something together to
Yeah,
create,
absolutely.
collaborate. Yeah, and then I love to go uh trusting my own right inner gut and inner vision. So initially, because I was going through my own divine masculine energy healing, like I wasn't right like seeing that. Then and then something happened in between, right? And then like I got the vision. I was like, okay, this is it. Like, Archangel Michael was like, you gave me the green light, and he's like, okay, girl, like, and now is the time. I also see, like, I believe that all these things that happen when we are truly ready, right? Like when we are ready mentally and energetically, right? And as human beings too, to create something, right? Or like to express something into the world authentically. And the energy matters, like, our state of mind and everything. I believe it's a bunch of factors, like I know for sure at that time when I talked to you, Dr. Will, like I wasn't probably fully ready, right? To like, show up in my full capacity. And also, guys, it's very interesting, right? Like initially we planned to record this conversation like last week, and then
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
day before I woke up and I basically lost my voice, like I
All
couldn't
right.
speak. Yeah, because like I was going through a throat chakra clearing, and a lot of like also, right, like the ability to speak up, right? Some releasing some ancestral trauma and my own, like self-limiting beliefs. So I could feel this energy like clearing my throat, and I knew like I have to stay silent. So we kind of, right, like we surrendered to the flow of the divine timing, and I believe that's the best. And here we are now. So why I'm very, very actually excited to have you here today,
Yes.
Will. Yeah, and I'm gonna pass the mic, the virtual mic. I'd like to, just please, if you can, speak a little bit like
Absolutely.
about you, like who
Well,
you are, like right, like what kind of work you do, and
absolutely. Yeah, no, so first of all, thank you for having me, and hopefully he's not too embarrassed. But shout out to Dr. Don for getting us connected. Like I said, I know he's a very modest man, but he's a good man, and this really wouldn't have happened without him. So definitely big appreciation to him. So just like you said, my name is Dr. Will Harvey. I've been a nurse, a clinician for Lord 20. 24 years. And started out kind of, and I won't give you the whole resume, but started out more as like a nurse's aide, and rose through as a nurse in emergency medicine, and then currently in home care. So, my day-to-day job, if you will, is currently in home care over Maryland and Virginia. We treat thousands of people in need, very vulnerable adults, and that work, and going through not only my career, but in my academic journey, primarily with my PhD in human and social services, just kind of gives me I think, a good perspective on public health and working with vulnerable communities. So when you talk about some of the work that you do and helping people kind of rise above and transcend, I think that's a very similar plane. One of the reasons that we got connected, as I'll kind of add and we'll kind of tie in, is that we talked about my career and talked about, just some of the academic work, but all of that before any of that got started, I too am um, a survivor, I will say, of like kind of trauma, like a lot of us are, and dealing with my own abandonment issues, primarily with my father. And, for years and years and years, reconciled that by and large and kind of moved through. And I always had an idea to, going through my doctoral journey, always had an idea to focus on men who've been paternally abandoned, right? And kind of write something, or a guide to maybe help like spouses who actually love those men dealing with trust issues, insecurities, vulnerability, self-sabotage in relationships. And it always had kind of been kind of a passing thought in the back burner. But to bring us a little bit more current, last year I did, go through a divorce, and a lot of things kind of came out, right? And wasn't just like, all right, well, my dad left me and reconciling with that, but then I'd been left by my wife, and all the messiness that kind of happened there. And I was like, well, now's the time to write this book. And for no other reason than a little bit of catharsis and a little bit of healing, which I know you're big on. So, I did write. It is out now. My book, Please Don't Leave Me. All right. So people can get that, and we can certainly talk about it. But that's kind of me in a big 360, really trying to, just like you promote a lot, really trying to turn, stuff that is tragic and really hard to deal with, but into a positive so it doesn't bring you down further. So you can find ways to transcend and make the best out of your life.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree, and thank you so much for
of
sharing
course.
your story. I know it's vulnerable, so
Hmm.
that's what I was gonna say, right? Like when I know you watched one of my videos before, like one of those that's like kind of like you responded, and I
Yeah.
remember like during, I think it was like August, September, a few of my videos that I
Hmm.
just kind of channeled, and just so you know, guys, I'm not sure if my viewers know that I never script my videos. Like I literally just set my camera and open up my mouth. I don't know if it's perfect, but that's how I feel, like I wanna, but like this is my one of my channels, like my one of the avenues, right, through which I share, right, also
Yeah,
my energy that is healing to people, right, and like I also, I think it's one of the avenues, so to speak. It's kind of like your book, right? It
absolutely.
helps me, right, also not only provide energy codes for healing or activation or transformation for people, right, so as I speak or I share some messages from the divine or whatever comes through, but also I do it for myself, right? So it's kind of
Hmm.
like it was the first channel that I saw, right, in my meditation. Like basically I got like my heart was like, my heart stuff was like, okay, like you got to do it, you got to. And of course I love to talk. If that's not clear yet, I'm always like a talker, since I was a kid. My mom, she, I've been singing since I was 14, but I used to be in two bands in high school and back, like 12 years ago in Miami when I just arrived to the United States. But I always kind of wanted to express myself, right, and deep
Hmm.
vocally, and then this was kind of like one of the avenues. And in those videos that I did, I think earlier, that were directed right to the masculine audience, I would say, like for those men that were ready to receive, right, like those healing energies.
Sure.
I remember I felt a lot of this, right, like kind of like a mother, like a nurturing, right, like divine mother or like mother earth
Mhm.
energy, right? So I know it was kind of, I believe that it was meant for more maybe to address the healing of the mother wound, right, with men.
Uh,
You see,
hmm.
like, but also see, right, like I realize when I channel it for men, right, like I heal, like my inner masculine is activating as well. And then even though right, like a woman, and I know you said that you kind of direct your work primarily helping men, but like I said, see, like I resonated with a lot of what you said and when we discussed on the phone, right? Because I also have a father wound, you know, because
Of course, of
my
course.
father, yeah, you know, I know, I think when you say abandonment, it's not only physical abandonment, like it's not only one people, but like like your father, you know, is leaving you, right, for another family, or they're dying. Like sometimes, like in my case, I believe, and many people probably will resonate with that. My father is physically here, he's alive, and they
Oh
never,
yeah,
he was about to walk out on my mom when I was 10, but he never did. But
right.
nevertheless, he was not there emotionally for me. You know, at a certain age, I just felt disconnected. So I
Mhm.
feel that, you know, your story in your book, and why I really wanted to, right, to be like to share your message with my viewers,
Sure.
you know, is meant to see this, that like abandonment, you know, like I used to think that abandonment means like when you physically, like, right, like you're physically abandoned, but
Hmm.
it's not only the case. And like, for example, I know how it affected me, right, when we were talking, when my father, right, like he was never, you know, like emotionally available to me as a daughter. Like, you know, I remember when I
Sure.
was a very little kid, you know, he was there and we used to play, and then that bond kind of like got disconnected. And then, you know, him being in his conditioning and his own trauma, you know, when I was teenager, like let's say he said some things that really hurt me, right? So, and I
Hmm.
know like how it affected me, right, in my, and by, you know, I allowed in the past, you know, before you know, of that, because of that, I allow, let's say, you know, my male partners in the relationship, right, like to do toxic things to me, or like tolerate
Right.
things, you know. So I feel like this abandonment, why I want to bring it up, I just kind of want to, you know, share with people that it's not only a physical loss of a father, you know, but it's also, you know, they can be physically there, but they're
Oh,
not
absolutely.
there, you know.
Yeah. No, no, let's talk because that's a lot to unpack. One, just like you said, just kind of a quick tangent before we kind of get into it. I think you're great at kind of the unscripted. I am horrible at it.
Yeah,
I've
don't
tried to
worry.
dibble. I've tried to dibble and dabble in kind of like different things. I gotta have a script in 20 takes. I am not great at that. I think that fact that it may sound a little silly, but I think the fact that you are so comfortable and that comes out so well in like what you do in a lot of your videos, I think that gives license to people that always aren't great at finding their voice and great at being authentic and finding their voice, kind of a license to just express it, right? See what comes out. So I wanted to talk about that, but to or mention that, but to kind of to your point, like yes, my original like my dissertation is on paternal abandonment, specifically with men who've been abandoned who are raising sons, right? So those that are raising kind of the next generation of men without having that support, right? So that's how it started. But to your point and what you mentioned, that father wound is gender neutral, right? It is, there are men who've been abandoned by their fathers, there are women that have been abandoned by their fathers, and then there are men who've been abandoned by their mothers and women who've been abandoned by their mothers. Where this book and this project and this mission then evolved to, especially after what I dealt with last year, was that like we're all deserving of that connection. And I'm not going to kind of preach love and everything like that, but I think we are deserving of a meaningful connection. And I started to think about, you know, truly after the anger and the grief and the 5 stages and everything like that, you know, that I went through last year, what could I actually do to help someone who was in my situation, right? Meaning, I'm working on myself, but it's an evolving thing, as you well know, right? So one of the things that I think help as somebody who is working on themselves is a guide to somebody else who loves that person. Hey, look, this person's going to work on themselves. The fact that they're even reading the book and taking the time and maybe journaling or doing therapy, they're working on themselves, but it's a long journey. So here's something that may help you understand the journey that they're going to. And when they maybe ask one too many questions or maybe quietly mutter something to themselves or maybe not speak up like we were talking about finding the voice, here's some of the reasons why, right? And I think that's important for all of us to heal. All of us are going through some sort of trauma, whether it's abandonment, physical, mental, emotional. And I think those of us who are strong enough also understand that you cannot do it alone and you need a little bit of help and guidance to do it. So no, I just appreciate you kind of having that platform. Happy to talk about the journey for sure, but I wanted to kind of describe specifically what I was focused on. And since this has come out, I've gotten so much feedback from you, from Dr. Don, from so many people that's actually said it's helped their relationships, which I got to tell you, I don't know if I truly expected. I mean, this started out as like a pet project that I didn't know would even see the light of day. So the fact that it's been resonating with people and it's helped people better communicate with their spouses, talk about childhood things so that they can be better understood by another human being, I think that's been marvelous. And I'm hoping other people follow not only this message, but what you preached and do the work to become a better person, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna tell you that, yeah, my YouTube channel, see, I never planned, right, to healing man.
All
It's funny
right.
that came up right when in a conversation with
Hey,
my,
yeah.
very beautiful spiritual male friend, which I
Hmm.
hope is gonna be my one of my guests in the future.
Okay.
But what I would wanted to point out, going back to what you said about the fact that you don't have to do it all alone, right?
Mhm.
And when I noticed, well, I started working, right, in private, let's say, or sharing, right, with my male friends who are
Huh.
doing, like, are going on their journey of healing journey, like being human is a journey in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
especially in today's times, it's very, very
Yeah.
interesting, and and it's difficult too, emotionally hard as well. And I
Hmm.
saw that in them, and I saw it within my inner masculine, right? That I had this deep, deep conditioning that society, right, kind of like ingrained into us for centuries, that I
Hmm.
have to do it all alone. And I realized that a lot of time, right, like because of that conditioning, right, like how hard it was for me, even me being a woman, right, but still, my inner man, right, like my inner masculine,
Hmm.
he wouldn't allow me, right? For example, that like it was like a little blockage that I felt before, right? Like to reach out, let's say for help, right? Like to therapy
Huh.
or something, like I would always feel this subconscious resistance. And only recently I realized like that's what it was coming from. And I know, and I've been told, I don't know all the men in the world, of course, but men from my view in today's society, I think it's even harder, right, for many of you guys, right, to be vulnerable
Hmm.
and to allow
Absolutely.
share with somebody your story, to go reach out for some kind of assistance or guidance, or like and because of that conditioning, it's a very strong conditioning.
Absolutely.
Like I'm a man and I'm a strong and I have to deal with it, and I'm happy that you are here, right, and you're speaking openly about it, and you wrote a book, because I feel we inspire people and we lead by example. So I really hope that you, right, like you can be an example, right, to some of my viewers,
Yes.
if they're going through something, or like they're not there's sure, then like when they see a person like you, right, who kind of broke that conditioning, and you're basically saying, hey guys, you don't have to do it all alone. There are people
Hmm.
like me, and there are people like Latara, and there is books, and there is this, and there is that, and here's what
Absolutely.
I went through, right? And like it's kind of like, I think that can be really helpful in itself, so that men, they might not reach out to me, right, never, but they might never reach out to you directly, but like at least they can see it, and then it will inspire, it will activate something within them, right? Maybe it will propel them, right, to take those steps. Maybe be it either your book, or consultation with me, or
Hmm.
therapy, or they're gonna go start, I don't know, taking up on some sports, like I know, right, like people, like you were saying, like I believe that we're all going to the same direction, only like different avenues, right, like what you're
Absolutely. Absolutely.
healthcare work, and through your book, right? Like I do it through my singing and my vocal
Hmm.
activations, right? Like with my videos, but it's all kind of like the destination, I would say, is the same. It's like we are all coming back to wholeness, to our inner wholeness, and
Right.
to the level of us realizing, I believe, that we are actually at essence and at nature, we have always been whole, right? But these traumatic events, right, and pain, it causes our subconscious mind, right, to like separate, like to segment, to push away.
That's a great point. Yeah.
It causes this, in our psyche, right? Like that's what I noticed. Like it causes, emotions, we suppress them. And I don't know about, United States. Like I was born and raised in Eastern Europe, and in my culture, men are very heavily conditioned since day one of their life not to show emotions, not to cry
Hmm.
themselves. And I know personally, even though I was a woman, when I release like some of my suppressed emotions, it's so much power, and it creates a lot of tension, bless you, right, on their psyche. So it's a lot of stress, and the more we suppress the pain, the trauma, the emotion, and we like pretend that it's not, we push it away and it's not there, and we try to move forward, like some, because for me masculine energy kind of like moves forward, right, like so you try not to stick. because you're more active, right? But then I noticed, for example, like when my father or some man that I know, right, from my country, like from my home country, or maybe even here, right? Like it's like if you suppress emotion, it doesn't go anywhere, and it only accumulates, and then it creates, right, like other, like distort, like, you know, it's like a distorted vision. Like we start perceiving
Correct.
ourselves, right, like not, because of that baggage is still there, and it's heavy. So it's a lot of stuff that comes into play. But I feel like that was like my intention, I guess, right? Like with making, one of my intentions with this video, it was like to kind of like, right, like to show people, and especially men that will be watching, right,
Mhm.
like whatever your experience has been or is, if you are going through, right, like right now through a toxic relationship or a difficult challenging marriage, right, or if you had, right, like a father loss, right, that it's possible, like you say, we don't have to be stuck in suffering forever.
No, not at all. And you kind of let's kind of break that apart a little bit. So I talk about that in the writing and in other avenues. In the sense of what you're describing is what I like to call when we abandon ourselves, meaning like when we know exactly what we know what we want to speak up on, we think we know our values, we want to stay true to them, but somehow we find ourselves in really vulnerable circumstances where for some reason, somewhere deep inside, that we don't speak up when we need to, and we allow ourselves maybe to be manipulated or abused or just stay in a situation that you know is wrong for too long for fear of not knowing what's on the other side, and then we abandon ourselves. That's what I mean by that. I do fundamentally believe that everyone on this planet, if you really sit down with them, talk to them for an hour and break through some of the log jam, that they can tell you what their core values are. They can tell you what they believe in. They can tell you their do's and don'ts. They can tell you what lines that they don't want crossed. However, a lot of things are situational. A lot of things, kind of not force you, but you start weighing the goods and the bads and the pros and the cons. And more often than not, you put your needs on the back burner for someone else, right? And all the while, you are abandoning yourself and making yourself more miserable over time, right? And then I think with men specifically, because you kind of mentioned that masculine energy and like that need to be stoic and to be a man. And, I talk about that a bit in the book in Redefining Masculinity, that a lot of men that I spoke to, some just like you said, it could be a cultural thing. That's how they were raised, whether there was a trauma or not. That's simply how they were raised. That's the culture. That's fine. Well, not fine, but that's kind of the path. A lot of men that I've talked to, took an attempt, if you will, to be vulnerable with someone else, whether it was another partner, a woman, their mother, a teacher, what have you. And more often than not, at some point, maybe not right then and there, but that vulnerability was weaponized against them. They told them something very close to their heart, maybe cried in front of them, maybe really let it all out. And maybe a week later, a month later, a year later, that person weaponized it and spun it around on them, and not just to a man, to a woman, of course, as well. But a lot of men that I spoke to, that was the one thing that triggered it all and started building that first brick. Like, oh my God, I really want to be vulnerable. I really want to be open, but I can't now because it's going to be toxic. And then men carry that. They
Yeah.
shouldn't, but they carry that from relationship to relationship to relationship. And so many, I'm sure you've dealt with in your own life and dealt with the people that you've worked with and counseled, where the communication is the biggest issue. He doesn't talk about this and what have you. A lot of that is rooted into that weaponization that happened moons ago. It doesn't make it right, but a lot of that is rooted that, that one bad egg or one bad apple spoiling the bunch kind of a thing. And I think we as men need to learn to let that go. That, to your point, you said you don't know every man on the planet. Well, there's 8.4 billion people on this planet. Not all of them are out to get us. And sometimes we need to let this go. And I know that's not easy. And, it takes hard work and journaling and therapy and sessions like this where we can literally just talk.
Yeah.
Just talk. No right answer, no wrong answer. Let's just get it off of our chest and let that healing begin so we can let some of that baggage go so we can focus on that prize in front of us. So, no, you're absolutely right. But that's kind of how I describe self abandonment. I think both of us are at a stage, and hopefully a lot of your viewers are moving towards this stage of letting that go and standing up for themselves and finding their voice. But it takes time. And, to your viewers who may be with somebody like that, man or woman, as long as you claim that you love them, which I hope that you do, know that they need your help to get through some of that. They cannot do that alone.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And go back to what you said, right? Like about those men when they were vulnerable, and then
Mm.
the partner were, used to weaponize, like it was like used against them.
Yeah.
First of all, I had a ex-boyfriend do that to me too when I expressed something I shared about some past sexual trauma, and
Yeah. Exactly.
3 months later when we were breaking up, like he called me damaged goods and blamed it on my past
Yeah.
and like that.
Yeah.
Well,
It's horrible.
I was gonna tell you that, yeah, I want to give credit, right, to those men, or like kind of
Hmm.
support them in a way that not every woman also is ready to hold your vulnerability. See, because
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
so, if a woman did that to you guys, I'm really sorry. And
Hmm.
but sometimes you guys are right, when you decide not to speak, some vulnerable stuff to some women.
Great point.
Here is what I believe. Here is when it comes to play the healing of us women too, right? It's like it's a
Hmm.
parallel process. Like we women, we need your guys' help to help us heal, like in advance, and this vice versa, right? So I can speak for myself, and I also know that for women, like, right, like if a woman has had also, right, has all her own abandonment or whatever other traumas, right, then she
Hmm.
has and she hasn't processed that's unhealed, right, then we
Yeah.
store our pain in our body, right, especially women. And then the pain and unresolved trauma, right, or like whatever wasn't addressed, caused by men, right, the wrongdoing, so to speak, that causes women to have to carry a lot of resentment, right, and anger, and like in their subconscious mind, like with themselves. So then, if that woman, for example, right, like if she hasn't done any healing work and she's not aware, right, that she is projecting her resentment, right, or whatever, right, the emotion, like because it's she like it wasn't. It's usually it's not because of that man, right, who was vulnerable. It's usually right in her subconscious. That's
Absolutely.
to that past person, but
Right.
because she, right, it's a projection, so she projects that unresolved resentment, pain, anger, like trauma. So I
Right.
believe this is why, right, it happens. Like those women, right, weaponize and use that vulnerability, right, to hurt back that person, that man.
No, that's a good.
Times, right? Again, I wasn't there,
Hmm.
but I know for me,
No.
that's what I used to do. And it took
Correct.
time, right, to realize. And so that would be, right, my advice, right? Like, yes, if I would be to share, right, like with those men, like you guys, like if that woman did that to you, like she did weaponize your vulnerability,
Correct.
it's sad, but like if you maybe it can help you understand, right? Like that's because she had her own unresolved trauma and she
Absolutely.
gifted that to you guys. And this is why we all, right, like need to take an effort. And we heal our own stuff. You guys go through your journey. So then, right, like only in a more or less, right, like conscious and
Hmm.
a little bit of healed space, like we can, right, start communicating and opening, right, to each other. And it takes
Yep.
like it takes a lot of trust, right? Like I know for myself too on my journey, right, of healing eventually, right, because like I did have that trauma and also like sexual abuse trauma caused by a man, right, like in my early 20s. So it caused me, for example, to like my subconscious mind made the programming that all men are assholes, right? So like when
Yeah.
you like, I cannot trust them, they're my enemies, right? So
Right.
I healed that, right, and I was able to start letting go and saying like, hey, you know what, yeah, that guy, he did whatever he did, but that doesn't mean that on other men, right, who are different, like who are conscious, who are kind, right, and who are soft.
Right.
And eventually I can speak for myself for sure, and I think it may go both ways at some point, right? I know for me to move up to the next level, right, of healing and fully let go of my, right, like trauma related to men, right?
Hmm.
You can't heal only in the women's circles. Sooner or later,
No.
I had to open up, right, to take that, like, so like one little step of trust. Maybe it's a
Right.
little bit to open up to a male, like let a male friend, right, let's say hug me, or let a male friend, share something, or have a platonic relationship, like, or like,
Hmm.
and you take these steps, right? Because in order to regain like full trust, right, in men, in my case, and maybe for you guys, for men, for into like faith in women, like there are other women that like that can actually hold space and love me, right, and be okay with my vulnerability and not, right, like use it against me. Eventually, like you gotta get out of that shell, right, the protective shell that we built.
Agreed.
And this is why I believe, like, right, these conversations like you and I have
Yeah.
today, also in itself is empowering. I hope it's inspiring, right, empowering people so that, right, like, I think we're going collectively as humankind as well, right, like through this process of like, women are more like are doing the work and the men did a lot of work, so we shed a lot of tears, a lot of trauma. So now
Hmm.
like some, right, like some of us who are ready, like we are ready to like kind of start, merging, right, like coming together
Sure.
and collaborating and like empowering each other and helping each other speed up that process, right, because to
Right.
the yin and the yang, right, it can do much more and much deeper level than just us women alone and you guys alone, right?
Sure, and it kind of harkens back to kind of what you brought up a lot of good points. So I want to try to like hit on as many as possible. But you brought up a lot of things about like we can't do this alone, and I've mentioned it too. But like to the point of I'm going to kind of rephrase a little bit of what you said, that sometimes your partner or that other person or that person you wish to be vulnerable with isn't ready to hold your truth, if you will, right? That goes two ways, from me to that other person, this person to me. And there's one of the oldest adages that I can recall, that it goes hurt people, right? If people aren't fully healed, whether they're best intentioned or not, typically they will lash out or they will do something to hurt that other person. I think that what kind of goes in that two-way relationship in or that two-way street in a relationship where two people may enter into a relationship both with big baggages of trauma. That's not saying that that relationship cannot be positive, it cannot thrive, but both parties need to own their trauma, be open with it as much as hopefully their hearts and minds allow, so that both of them can help each other. I think while on its surface, and I think we know because we kind of do this, but I think sometimes the general public doesn't always, what's the best way to put it? I think human beings are one of the most resilient beings on this planet, but sometimes I don't think we fully understand how vulnerable our minds are. And that, one trauma from 40 years ago or yesterday can stay with us through the rest of our lives. And people, just try to wall those scars up and push through, not knowing like kind of the time bomb that's kind of ticking in their head. And I just think if we could be a little bit more forthright and honest with ourselves and especially our partners, family's a different thing, but those that like love us on an intimate level, that bond I think is important to share, because if you're not open with them and help them get through their own stuff, they can't help you and love you the way that you want, and then vice versa. I just think you just kind of hit a lot of like good things too. And I'm sorry for obviously what you went through. That is absolutely horrific, and but it kind of harkens to the thing where like other people will weaponize it when they haven't reconciled their own demons, when they haven't reconciled their own trauma and their own issues.
Yeah.
I've been in relationships even before my last and after, where some of that kind of came up, where everything's all good and everybody's smiling and Instagram pictures, but the
Yeah.
second it goes toxic, they bring up every single trauma and vulnerability you've ever shared, and it's rapid fire, and it's like it makes you try not to get off too much on a tangent, but it makes you question it makes you question your own sense of not only self-worth, but your ability to trust. Because at some point you did love or like this person, right? At some point you saw a future perhaps with this person. So at some point you did feel safe enough to open up a little bit, right? You just didn't know some of the scars that the other person had to weaponize it. So it just kind of goes back to, kind of what we talked about through this whole conversation of, as hard as it is from relationship to relationship or experience to experience, trying to be resilient and recognize not every new relationship is your past relationship, and being brave enough to be vulnerable one more time
Yeah.
and maybe one more time